When Eisenhower entered the German prison camp, every officer expected him to inspect the barracks, sign the transfer papers, and leave before dusk, but he stopped beside a mud-stained prisoner board where one empty line had been rubbed so often the wood had turned pale. And when he ordered the clerk to read the names aloud, the counting suddenly broke, the guards stopped moving, and one prisoner who was supposed to exist nowhere began to matter more than all the men still behind the wire. Eisenhower arrived at the camp after a morning convoy crossed the broken German road, and before his car had fully stopped near the gate, the American provost marshal stepped forward with a folder that listed rations, barracks numbers, deaths, transfers, and disciplinary cases prepared for a quick inspection. The German camp commander, Colonel Volker, stood beside the main office with two former staff officers under guard, and he offered the polished prisoner ledger with a stiff bow. But Eisenhower did not take it at once because his eyes had already moved to the outdoor counting board beside the wire. A young American clerk named Harris read the first column aloud while two guards compared the numbers, and the count matched until he reached Barack 7, where the board showed one scraped line between two names, neither empty enough to ignore nor clear enough to read. Volker said the mark was an old correction from the winter, and he tried to guide Eisenhower toward the office table. But Eisenhower ordered every list opened in the yard so the prisoners could see the count being checked where the mistake had been found. The first list showed no missing prisoner, the second list showed no transfer, and the third list showed no death certificate. Yet the Barack roll still carried a space where a name had once been written, erased, and written again before someone cut it away with a knife. Eisenhower ordered Harris to bring the senior prisoner from Barack 7, and an elderly German sergeant named Bauer came forward with a limp, removed his cap, and said the man had been counted every dawn until 3 weeks earlier, when the guards stopped calling his name. Volker interrupted and claimed Bauer was confused because several sick men had moved through the infirmary during the same period. But Bauer pointed to the pale groove on the board and said the missing man had slept on the lower bunk nearest the stove. Eisenhower sent 2 MPs into Barack 7, and they returned with a blanket, a tin cup marked with the letter K, and a folded bread wrapper hidden beneath the bunk board, while no official document admitted that any prisoner with that initial had ever occupied the camp. The camp office became the next stop, and Eisenhower ordered every ledger placed side by side on the table. Then he made Volker watch while Harris compared intake cards with ration cards, work cards, sick call cards, and burial slips. A contradiction appeared at once because the kitchen book showed one extra ration drawn for 22 days after the official count had dropped, and the infirmary book showed one bandage issued without a patient number on the same morning the erased name vanished. Eisenhower closed the ledger with one hand and ordered the gate locked from the inside, not to trap the prisoners, but to stop every officer, clerk, guard, and driver from leaving until the camp could explain how a man had been fed, treated, counted, and then removed from every list. Subscribe for more forgotten German POW stories like this one. The first escalation came when Eisenhower ordered a full recount by Barack instead of by ledger, and the prisoners were marched into separate lines while American guards placed numbered tags on each row, forcing the German clerks to match living bodies against the papers they had trusted. Harris found that the total count matched only because one dead prisoner from March still appeared on the active roll, and that false living name balanced the empty space left by the prisoner who had vanished, creating a perfect number that hid 2 separate crimes at once. Volker tried to blame confusion during the Allied advance, but Eisenhower ordered the dead man's file pulled from the burial cabinet, and the file contained a signed certificate, a grave location, and a ration cancellation that had been copied into one ledger, but not the master count. The German assistant clerk, Meissner, began sweating as Harris asked why one dead man remained alive on paper, and when Meissner reached for a cigarette, an MP stopped his hand because the same brand of cigarette ash covered the knife-cut groove on the prisoner board. Eisenhower separated the clerks into 3 rooms, and each was ordered to rewrite the last 30 days of camp movements from memory, while the prisoners remained under guard in the yard, and the kitchen staff was made to produce every ration chit issued since the missing line appeared. The first written statement claimed the missing man had been sent to a labor detail. The second claimed he had gone to the infirmary, and the third claimed no such man existed, which made Eisenhower order the labor sheds searched before Volker could adjust the story. Inside the first shed, the MPs found ordinary tools and broken carts. But inside the second shed, they discovered a locked cabinet with civilian coats, forged travel passes, and 4 prisoner tags wrapped in cloth, one of them scratched until only the letter K remained. A German guard named Ritter suddenly demanded to speak because he feared being blamed alone, and he said a prisoner called Keller had been removed at night after refusing to sign a paper that changed his identity from prisoner to witness. Eisenhower ordered Keller's name searched in every list, but the camp books contained no Keller, no matching prisoner number, and no transfer order, while Bauer from Barrack 7 said the man had been known by another name when he arrived from a collapsed railway convoy. The convoy records were brought from a truck outside the office, and Harris found a torn intake sheet showing that one prisoner had arrived without tags, without boots, and with a note attached to his coat that read, "Hold separately until command decision." Volker's control began to break when Eisenhower asked who had written the note, because the handwriting matched the commander's own signature on the daily ration approval, and the missing prisoner was no longer a clerical error, but a man deliberately pushed outside the system. Eisenhower ordered Volker confined to the office under guard, and before sunset he sent patrols to the old punishment cellar, the infirmary annex, the chapel loft, and the abandoned motor pool, because a man erased from every list could be hidden only in a place the lists never counted. The major consequence began in the infirmary annex, where the American medic found a locked treatment room with fresh straw on the floor, a bowl still wet with soup, and a blood-stained sleeve that had been cut from a prisoner coat rather than from a hospital uniform. Eisenhower ordered the camp doctor brought in, and the doctor admitted that a nameless patient had been treated for fever and broken ribs, but he claimed the man had been moved by order of the command office before American forces took the area. The doctor's statement caused immediate consequences because Eisenhower removed every German medical orderly from duty, placed American medics inside the annex, and ordered the prisoners examined for hidden injuries that had never entered the camp records. During the examination, one Polish prisoner identified the sleeve as Keller's because he had repaired the cuff with black thread after a winter transport, and he said Keller had protected a group of prisoners during a train attack before the camp commanders separated him. This new testimony changed the investigation from a missing man search into a question of why Keller had been isolated, and Eisenhower ordered the railway convoy file opened in front of the witnesses, not in the commander's office, but on a table in the yard. The torn file showed that Keller had arrived with a sealed pouch taken from a dead German courier, and Volker had signed for the pouch personally. Yet no pouch appeared in camp property books, no receipt reached Allied hands, and no inventory mentioned its contents. An American intelligence captain named Loring arrived from division headquarters, and after reading the torn intake sheet, he ordered Volker's quarters searched because sealed courier material could contain orders, names, money, or escape routes for officials trying to disappear. The search found no pouch in the desk, no pouch in the safe, and no pouch beneath the floorboards, but an MP found a small brass key sewn inside the lining of Volker's spare coat, with a tag stamped from the old railway station outside the camp. Eisenhower ordered a convoy to the station, and the search party entered the burned baggage room, where a locked station locker opened with the brass key and revealed a packet of identity papers, American currency, and a map showing a hidden road toward the mountains. The packet contained one more item that changed every face at the table, because inside the papers was a prisoner photograph labeled Keller, while the reverse carried a different name and a note stating that the man had seen the camp commander exchange prisoners for escape documents. Volker was returned to the yard under tighter guard, and the prisoners saw him pass without his sidearm, his coat, or his command badge, while Eisenhower ordered him confronted with the photograph in front of Loring, Harris, Bauer, and the camp doctor. Volker finally admitted only one thing, that Keller was alive when he was moved from the infirmary, but he refused to say where he had been taken, and that refusal brought the severest consequence yet, because Eisenhower placed the entire German staff under arrest as suspects in the disappearance. The major reversal came after midnight, when an American patrol returned from the motor pool with a prisoner who had been hiding beneath a canvas truck cover, and everyone believed for one hard moment that Keller had been found until the man raised his face and proved to be Meissner, the missing assistant clerk. Meissner had escaped his room during the confusion and hidden inside the truck because he feared Volker more than the Americans, and he carried a torn page from the real camp register, a page that showed Keller had not been removed by the commander alone. Eisenhower ordered the office lamps lit again, and Meissner placed the page beside the false ledger, revealing that Keller had originally been entered as a German prisoner of war, but later reclassified by hand as an unverified civilian detainee, which allowed him to be moved without triggering military transfer rules. The reversal struck harder when Meissner said Keller was not being hidden to silence him only, because Keller had been used as bait to expose a prisoner smuggling ring run by men inside the camp, men who traded identities, rations, and stolen papers while pretending to be ordinary captives. Bauer was brought back from Barrack 7, and when Eisenhower showed him the page, Bauer admitted that several prisoners had pressured Keller to surrender the courier pouch, because the pouch contained names of collaborators who planned to escape west under false camp records. A new conflict opened inside the prisoner yard as men from Barrack 7 accused Bauer of protecting informers, while others shouted that Keller had been betrayed by prisoners before Volker ever erased him, and American guards had to separate the barracks before the argument became a fight. Eisenhower ordered a controlled search of prisoner belongings, not to punish the barracks, but to stop the ring from destroying evidence. And within an hour, MPs found 3 forged identity cards hidden inside a stovepipe, 2 ration seals under a mattress, and 1 American pass folded inside a prayer book. The pass carried Keller's false civilian name, which meant someone had prepared to move him out of the camp under a disguise, and Loring concluded that the missing prisoner might still be alive because dead men did not need travel papers, maps, or a fresh signature line. Volker suddenly changed his story and offered to lead Eisenhower to Keller in exchange for protection from the prisoners, but Eisenhower refused to bargain and instead ordered him to walk under guard beside Meissner, forcing both men to guide the search to the same location. They led the patrol beyond the outer fence to an old waterworks building marked as unsafe on every camp map, and the reversal became complete when the door opened to reveal not Keller's body, but a hidden holding room with empty chains, a recently used lamp, and boot prints leading through a drainage tunnel. The prisoner missing from every list had escaped the place built to erase him, and Eisenhower understood that the final danger was no longer finding where Keller had been kept, but reaching him before Volker's men or the prisoner's smuggling ring reached him first. The final irreversible event began before dawn when Eisenhower ordered 2 search teams through the drainage tunnel, while a 3rd team sealed the road to the mountains, and the camp siren was deliberately left silent, so anyone waiting outside would believe the disappearance remained undiscovered. Inside the tunnel, the MPs found a strip of prisoner cloth tied around a pipe, then a second strip near a broken grate, and the trail led them into a frozen ditch behind the railway station where wagon tracks showed that someone had recently stopped and waited. Loring followed the wagon tracks toward a ruined farm, while Eisenhower stayed at the camp to control the prisoners, because the forged passes had already triggered anger in the barracks, and one wrong rumor could turn the yard into a riot before Keller was found. At the farm, the search team discovered Keller hiding inside a collapsed potato cellar with a fever, a stolen coat, and the sealed courier pouch still tied beneath his shirt, but he refused to step out until an American medic showed him the prisoner tag with the scratched letter K. Keller was carried to the road under blankets, and when the wagon driver tried to run from the barn, MPs caught him with Volker's second map in his boot, proving that the commander had arranged a final pickup after pretending to cooperate with Eisenhower. The irreversible break came when Keller opened the pouch before Eisenhower, Loring, and two witnesses, revealing signed escape names, payment lists, and a final order authorizing the removal of any prisoner who could expose the false identities moving through the camp. Eisenhower ordered Volker, Meissner, the wagon driver, and three prisoner ringleaders separated for military investigation, and he ordered every forged name crossed from the transfer board in red pencil so no man could leave the camp under a stolen life. Keller was then brought into the yard on a stretcher, not for display but to identify the men who had traded his name, and with one raised hand he pointed to a prisoner cook, a former Barak leader, and a silent interpreter who had carried messages between Volker and the ring. The prisoners did not cheer because the sight of Keller ended the comfortable lie that only the guards had hidden the truth, and Eisenhower used that silence to order a full re-registration by body, face, scar, language, and witness, making the old lists useless forever. By evening, the false ledgers were sealed as evidence. The erased board was removed from the wall, and a new roll was written in ink under American supervision, with Keller's real name placed first as the man whose absence had exposed every other stolen identity. The final act could not be undone because Eisenhower signed an order halting all transfers from the camp until every prisoner was verified, which destroyed Volker's escape network, trapped the collaborators inside the wire, and turned one missing line into the document that broke the entire hidden system. 2 days later, Keller was placed in the infirmary beside an open window while Harris nailed a clean prisoner board near the gate, and Eisenhower watched the first new count begin without scraped wood, false numbers, or borrowed names. When Keller's name was read aloud, the prisoners answered for him until he lifted one weak hand from the blanket, and the camp that had erased him was forced to record him first, because after that morning no man could disappear behind a perfect total again. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WW2 stories.